Welcome to the Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Hany Rambod, and I'm here with my co-host, Austin, and we're here to speak the truth.
We are.
Yes. It's been a while.
Yeah.
So how long is it? Like at least a month?
It's been a little while. Did you have anything happen in December?
No.
Nothing?
There was Christmas.
Yeah.
And before that, it was Black Friday.
Yeah.
And we just came out for New Year's.
There was nothing in between Christmas or Black Friday. Nothing really happened.
There might have been a show.
I heard there was a show.
There was a show in Vegas.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the USA's.
No. Well, yeah. You had quite the weekend there.
Yeah, it's been crazy. We just got back to Texas. We were in Vegas, took a little short stint to California, see some family, friends, and also primarily work on my wife's store, Nutrition Palace. Farron has been working really hard on trying to get a new reset. There's a bunch of new things that are happening at her store she's very focused on. And now they're getting hit with this crazy weather. The rain, it's like an El Nino year. Every day for the next 10 days, it's supposed to be raining.
Really?
So they had such a crazy drought, and now it's just raining cats and dogs.
There's no in between.
No, when we were here, or I should say here, when we went to Vegas was cold. It snowed up in the mountains.
Cold. Yeah.
Then we went to California. Weather was nice. 60, 65 degrees. Here in Texas, it got down to 7 degrees. But we weren't here to feel that.
Good thing you got that hoodie.
Yes.
I noticed that. It's a nice one.
You like the new Young LA hoodie?
I like it. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a fan.
Oh, wait till you see the new stuff that they sent me.
What?
It's fire.
I will expect.
Yeah. You know, I might be able to hook you up with a couple because there's some Chris Bumstead limited edition stuff that got stuck at the house.
Just let me get a little.
Are you a double XL?
Let me take some 3. No, I'm not a double XL. You're blowing up my head there a little bit. No, I'll take an XL. I'll just wear oversized pump covers. But yeah, no, I like that a lot.
That's the boss look.
Yeah.
The final boss. Have you ever seen those memes yet?
Yeah,
the final boss, and he's got the hoodie on. He's got the final boss.
Yeah.
The final boss.
But it's been wild. Crazy month.
Yes.
We're here for the Olympia recap.
There's a lot of things to talk about. Again, we got here, I think it was like the 28th, 29th we got back. And we've been just trying to reset. We got so many things going on with the Evagens gym.
Oh, yeah.
The new headquarters, stuff that just got basically put on hold while we were getting ready for the Olympia. We had Hottie here for 6 weeks. We had Derek that was going up. He had his ups and downs. I don't want to talk too much about Derek because I'd love to be able to get that straight from the horse's mouth. Because we had some definitely like some crazy ups and downs during that prep. And then obviously Chris with, I think he had a really good showing.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And but yeah, let's talk about this. I mean, again, it's trying to get back in the groove of podcasting right now. I've been just so hammered. I'm still recovering from that crazy prep, especially the last week.
I have never seen you like that before.
Well, you never been to a prep with me before.
No. I remember seeing you that night, Saturday at the Gala. You were just like,
well, I hadn't slept the whole day.
Yeah, no, glazed over. And you were like still, it looked like there was just so much happening, but you were just kind of like, the work is done for the most part, finished it. And it was just, that was pretty wild. So
for most part, it was done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing about the whole prep the last week was the prejudging being so late. It was so late. The guys didn't get on stage till after 11 p.m.
Well, they were waiting back.
Yes.
The whole time, right?
The whole time they were sitting back there. So they didn't get on stage till 2 a.m. Eastern time, I believe. And it was 11 p.m. West Coast. And a lot of people were just like, what's going on? What's going on? And it's just, I had Hottie and Derek that were just trying to stay calm, stay back there, trying to stay focused. And I think that ultimately between that for me, having it so late, we didn't get out of there till 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Then went back to the room, checked on Hottie, checked on Derek, told them what to do for their next meal and then what to do in the morning because I knew I wasn't going to be able to see them first thing in the morning because Chris had his prejudging. Yeah. So by the time I got done with Hottie, taking a look, seeing what adjustments we had to make after prejudging, and Derek, then by the time I ate something, it was 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not going to go to sleep because Chris is going to be up at 5. I need to look at Chris. We need to go get him to tanning. He has to do his thing. So tell him what meals to have for the first 2 to 3 meals. then be able to go out there, get everything prepared. And I didn't know if it was going to run late on that end too. So I just stayed up. I didn't go to bed.
I think I saw you in the elevator. Yes. At that time.
Yes.
And we're just in passing, and all you said was, hey, team no sleep. And I was just like, I knew as soon as I walked by.
Yeah, you said like, oh, good morning. And I said, no, it's still night.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way. As soon as I walked by, I'm like, yeah, he didn't go to sleep. He just had to, because just back to back to back.
Yeah, I think that was around 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah,
5 a.m.
It was around 5 a.m. So
I saw you in the elevator, and I was like, this guy's going to go wake up to go work out. And I was like, he's like, good morning. I'm like, you mean good night?
Yeah,
but
just
there
go
was
straight down.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was it's like,
but all paid off.
It did.
Because I mean, you literally, people, whenever I come home and people around me who are not super into bodybuilding are like, oh, how did it go? I'm like, as good as it could have gone. Like numerically, it could not have gone better.
Absolutely.
And so I think that the big one, we'll of course jump around to a few different, but like just going straight into it, Hottie.
Yeah.
That's obviously the big thing that everybody wants to talk about.
Yep.
Just right off the bat, what were you feeling from all of that? I mean, it was got to be amazing walking on stage, and you could see how incredibly happy he was. Where do you want to start when it comes to Hottie?
Well, it's a culmination of hard work, persistence, never giving up. When he was talking about how he sacrificed so much, he didn't have money for bus fare in Iran to go to the gym, to go to places. He didn't have the ability to communicate properly, so people would make fun of him because of his hearing disability. All of these things were just a culmination of just being able to have that inner drive to work so hard that he would be able to someday raise a trophy over his head to say, I am the best in the world at what I do, regardless of the passport, I just can't even talk about it. It just makes me crazy thinking. It's just so overwhelming, because if you look at it, everyone said that there's no way he'll ever be Mr. Olympia. So many people, I'm not gonna say everybody, because there were some people that had hope, but most people said he is not the typical Mr. Olympia. And I looked at it and said, well, neither was Ramy.
Yeah.
Ramy, even though he spoke some English, he didn't have the hearing situation. He didn't have the passport situation, but they let him win. And I felt like, well, he won, so why can't Hottie? And if he's consistent, and I think that was the number one reason why he won, was his consistency. And when he lost, even when some people said he should have won 2019, I'll be honest with you, I had him over Brandon Curry. Even though Hottie was third, I thought he was much more complete. He was shredded top to bottom, front to back. And I felt like Brandon, and there was William in the between, but he didn't complain. He just went back to the drawing board. He said, what do we need to do to get better? And I told him, we're going to need to put on some more size. And every year was just a little more size, a little more size. And then this year was a lot more size.
A lot more.
Right.
Yeah. How much weight difference?
10 pounds of stage weight. 10 pounds of stage weight.
So full.
Yeah. So full, so much bigger.
Yeah.
Maybe I might even release some photos building up to the show. Might even do that. So stay tuned.
Potential sneak peek.
Yes. A little sneak peek of what he looked like getting ready for the show. But that was just knowing that if we could turn around and put on 10 more pounds of stage weight, which he needed to be able to be formidable against Brandon Curry, Big Ramy.
Still with great conditioning.
Still with great conditioning. Now, again, is it going to be as sharp? No, we're going to sacrifice 10, 15% conditioning, but for 10 pounds. 10 pounds of stage weight. And you could see all of it. His legs were up. His chest was up. His back was bigger. Everything.
Not even on one of those guys, he's not 6 foot.
No.
So that 10 pounds is a very substantial
a lot of weight on his frame.
Yeah.
And I think that going forward, even next year, keeping him to where he's at, but just bringing it even sharper is going to make even more dangerous. And then to turn that into a different story, now all of a sudden you have Derek, who people were sitting out there saying that he wasn't going to be in the top 10.
I heard that. And I was like,
he wasn't going to be in the top 10. So, and Hottie was going to be 5th, and Derek wasn't going to be in the top 10. And Chris was going to lose because I don't know how to work with tall bodybuilders. Now, albeit some of the, there's a particular coach who said this on a podcast, and I didn't listen to any of the stuff until after the show was over. So
until the goal,
I was bored in California,
were in your hand,
and I said,
hands.
"Well, I don't. It's focus.
Yeah,
it's staying focused. Don't listen to the peanut gallery and the cheap seats." Yeah, it's true. But
that can be applicable to anything. Literally, any goal, anything you're doing in life. And I heard so much of that. People going into it where it's like, oh yeah, Derek maybe cracks the top 10 or what. And somebody asked me the morning of, they're like, where do you see Derek? I'm like, top 3. No. And I was like, you know what? You asked. I'm just going to say it. I just have a feeling because we looked him over, Thursday night or Wednesday night at the gym. And I was like, he's going to cause some damage.
He was starting to really get in that drier, grainier type of conditioning the last several days. But it was a big, big whirlwind of his body trying to come around. You're putting somebody to over 20 pounds of stage weight on somebody. And that is very difficult to do with condition. So it's a balancing act, and it's a lot of new muscle. But going into what Hadi's strengths were about that conditioning, that muscle that's been grainy and it's been really, really diced for a long time. It's what I call marinated and seasoned. Then you have Derek, who's got the bubbly, rounder, fuller muscle bellies, but it's also not as grainy because it's very new. But he has more of a three-dimensional look, and he also has really crazy proportions. I heard someone told me that the people in the audience were gasping when he came out and he did his front relax.
It was. I told him, because I got a chance to talk to him the day after. Right. Or actually, it was Monday morning. He was doing his cardio. Went down there and we talked for about an hour. And when we were chatting, I was like, man, you got to know that I've not had an experience like that in a crowd before. He walked out and he just went front relaxed. As soon as he did, everybody around me went,
the air out of the room.
Yeah, it was like right away. People were like, whoa. Yeah, and right then I was like, yep.
I wish I could have experienced that. I was backstage and I was trying to, in the actually side area, and I was looking at a monitor and I was able to look off of the monitor. Yeah. And what had happened was I could hear the crowd really get pretty rambunctious when he started to hit his front double bicep.
Especially when he hit his rear shots too.
When he hit his rear shots, his back double is when people were like really starting to go off.
To me, that was the loudest the crowd got. In my opinion, from when I was sitting there, maybe
that's what it sounded like.
Yeah, I think he was the loudest, and of course, people are gonna be like a little biased, but no, like legitimately, I think it was the loudest, is because it was just a shock. It was kind of like the dark horse showed up, and something crazy like that happened.
Yeah, he was the question mark, right? Yeah. And he turned that question mark into an exclamation mark.
There you go.
Because everyone knew Nick Walker was going to be good. Yeah, he has so many pictures coming into the show. He had so many different lead up to the show photos. He had the ability to really, I don't want to say wow people, but Derek, because no one's seen what he looked like until the show, it was a big question mark. How is he going to look? How is he going to look? And I felt that also the fact that the last time he had full guest posing was in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And I think that between him, Nick Walker, even Hottie, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and everybody has the ability to kind of really, that's what's cool about bodybuilding. It's such an illusion. And it's like, what gives maximum impact? And seeing him be really 3D and having that really detailed back when he hits that back double bicep, and he's got that separation, and he's got the small waist and his glutes are in. I felt like his hamstrings were really dialed too. It was really cool to see. And I'm like, okay, now he's going to be battling. And then when you start seeing them and the call outs start coming out, and then the big thing was putting Ramy on the side, because some people had gone on their podcast or they had said, hey, maybe that's because he's in first.
It's like, y'all don't know how call outs.
Well, no, it's not true though, because they have done that.
They have done that?
Yes, they have done that before. Well, I'm not gonna take anything. So it doesn't happen most of the time, but it has happened in the past. But I could see with my own eyes, he had some different issues going on. Yeah. It looked like he was flat. He looked like he was a bit watery. He looked like his body was a bit faded and it wasn't pushing. And I don't know what they did. Everybody keeps trying to say, hey, you know, he carved up on, you know, some junk, or maybe he took too many diuretics or whatever happened. I'm not going to sit there and speculate because they only know what they did. Yeah. Now, all we know is the result wasn't optimal. Mm-hmm. And I thought that they were going to be pushing him in that third, fourth, and then they just kept him on the side. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started realizing that looked like he was going to be fifth. And some say Samson could have even beat him. Mm-hmm. And I think that if Samson was a bit tighter, he would have. But it's one of those things that you look at a current Mr. Olympia dropping that much. It's a pretty substantial hit. Yeah. And I feel that with Nick and Derek and Hottie, those guys were just really just battling it up. And when you look at Brandon, I saw Brandon is obviously very formidable, great shape, super big, full as a house, but just the conditioning.
Yep.
It's not there. Mm-hmm. The conditioning is not there. And if you think that you can bring that kind of physique that looks like a guy that should be guest posing, I'm sorry, but that's what that kind of physique looked like.
For me, it was very visible in the quads also.
It's not just visible in the quads. The problem is his upper body is so massive that it makes his quads look smaller. Mm-hmm. And then when you don't have the detail, it doesn't give you the depth.
Yeah.
The separation is what helps with the illusion.
Yeah.
So and he didn't have any. The separation was very, very minimal. And I felt like that it was a very dangerous thing because you look at that, it could have even been a little bit lower possibly. Mm-hmm. And especially with a guy like Samson Dauda.
These guys got to be on point with you know, these guys who are a little bit more seasoned got to be on point with all these newcomers coming in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what's happened is at that point, now you have two prior Mr. Olympias, one that was the current up until that point, and the other one who had won in 2019, but's been in the mix in the top two, top three. Now they're starting to drop. And then now you scratch your head and you go, okay, well, who else is in the top five mix? Because a Hunter Labrada, everyone's asking me, well, do you think he was off? I don't think he was super off. I just think that the competition is even better. And these guys are really improving at a higher rate. Now, could he have been more dialed in? Sure. There's ways of being able to be a little bit fuller, a little drier, a little bit more of that separated look, so you're more saran wrapped.
I think people were saying some stuff was off with the color on a few folks too.
Well, like everybody, so many people were off with color.
Yeah.
Many, many people were. I mean, I remember after the first night, Hottie looked like he was like mixed up in some mud. And he had a lot of caking going on. And I don't want to blame Protan because what's happened is that there was so much lack of light backstage. And I know that they have a light bulb on you, but you can't really tell. And normally there's a lot more light and there's a lot bigger backstage area.
Yeah. You need like photo studio light almost just to
get because and that's what you normally have.
Yeah.
At the Olympia in the past, right? Yeah. When it was at the Orleans or when it was at any of these other places, you had a really good amount of light when these guys are pumping up. You had a big pump up area. You had a bunch of areas where you could turn around and look at yourself. You have mirrors. You have all of these things. None of that was there because there was such a small area. And it was the biggest show that they've ever had. And from what I heard, they didn't realize how much of the space was going to be cannibalized by some of the studio sets that they had because they had a lot of studio setups back there that were for the announcing. So you had Phil Heath in one corner doing announcing with, I think it was with Tim and maybe someone else. Then you had another broadcast that was going on that was, I think, for Brazil and some others. So a lot of those little mini studio setups were just cannibalizing a lot of the space. And what happened was the areas that we were so used to, this big broad areas with some pump up area was big. And then you had these mirrors and then you can kind of check your color, you can check your oil, you can kind of walk around. Well, now it's pitch dark, pitch black with this crazy blue purple light. So if you see anything that's got that purplish pink light, that's all from backstage. And that was just the secondary light. So you can't tell if you look in the mirror when you have a pink light on you, this bluish pink light, what you look like. And I think that there was a picture of Derek with Phil, and somebody had taken. And I think Derek was doing like either a twist,
it's kind of like a single,
back it was a single, single back double type of twisting motion with Phil in his suit. Great picture, But I guarantee you nobody knew what that was going to look like until it was all done because it was with a flash. Yeah. It was with a ton of different settings to probably get that light to be able to be proper because there were so many different areas where it was just pitch black back there. So when these girls are back there doing color, and I'm sure some guys too, but like Carla and all them, they got like a light, little spotlight, and they're just looking at the person, but then you don't see that secondarily what the color looks like.
You can only do so much with that.
No. Yeah. And then by the time you see him on stage, you're like, oh crap, that's too dark. It's all caked up. All Hattie's rib cage was all caked up. All of this area was all caked up. And it was just color on top of color because they were just kind of trying to blend it in. But Hottie was also so dry, especially, he gets those crazy abdominals and those intercostals are just going nuts. He had Protan set in there. He's like almost like you got to scrape it out because it's so just deep in his intercostals. And I was just like, after pre-judging, go wash it all off. And I was calling the girls. Yeah. I said, go wash it all off. I called up the girls. They were like 1:32 in the morning. I was in his room and they were asleep because remember, I was up all night.
Yep.
So I was looking at Hottie. I'm like, this color. And Hottie's like, no, let's not leave. I don't want to screw anything up. I go, you need to wash this color off. The color is caked. Once it's caked, you need to get it reset. You need to get all the extra color off because it's imbalanced. And you have all these muddy spots. And then when he did that, it was like, okay, now is a fresh canvas. The next day, they just kind of cleaned it up, put a little coat on top of it. But we got into it a little bit because I said, look, man, don't just trust me on this. You're going to end up being too dark. It's going to look a lot worse because it's going to hide even more of your cuts. You need to get rid of this color. So he went in there and he washed off and finally talked him into it. Because again, he was just like, I'm in a good place. Like, I was in the middle and like, I go, yeah, but it's going to look just messed up by tomorrow. Trust me. It doesn't look good right now. It needs to get washed off. And also the lighting, man, I just think that we got to do something about this lighting. This lighting is just so dark and these LEDs. If you want a really good example of the difference between lighting, the same year, the same show, look at Chris Bumstead's pictures from the lighting in
the expo,
from just that classic physique prejudging to the night show. Because one's in the expo hall with traditional lighting versus all the LED lighting. And you'll see so much of that stuff just gets lost.
Yeah.
And that's the same day, just 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever later. And you'll see the same physique and how much better it looks under that more natural-esque lighting in the expo. So you see all of those guys, whether they're physique guys, whether they're classic physique guys, anybody that was doing their prejudging in the expo and then went and did the finals. And they all looked better earlier in the other lighting. Because by the time you see the LEDs and all of those things, everything gets washed out. And the more LEDs they have, the worse it gets.
Yeah, it was probably about the same distance from Chris at prejudging versus finals. Roughly about the same distance from the stage on both times. And it was way easier, even just without looking at screens, to see how Chris looked. Just, if that's the one-to-one comparison. Yeah. So it's a very, very big difference in compared to that. And so I think
all of them, though, I mean, Ramon, Urs, all those guys, you see all of their amazing photos that they had during prejudging. And then the night show, they look much more washed out. And again, they all look great, but there's a substantial difference in the lighting and how the picture quality is when you have that. And I think it has a lot to do with also back in the day, there was no LEDs. There's no LEDs, and then there was no digital cameras back in the day. They were using film. They were shooting all of those different photos way back on regular film cameras. And it doesn't have the sensors, the light sensors. They don't change and manipulate the photos and the images like they do now because of all of the LED lights trigger a different response on that.
Yeah, because you see different photos from different photographers using different things at different angles from the Olympian. You're like, this looks like completely different athletes.
Yeah, that's why when you go look like New York Pro, Ironman back in the day, all of those photos look amazing. USA's look amazing because those stages were all set up with regular theatrical lighting. They weren't LEDs. So again, everybody wants to kind of compare, well, what's going on? Well, just look at the same show, same competitors in the classic, all those top 5 guys, and look at their pictures from the prejudging to the night show. And you can see the difference. And hopefully they can get that worked out because it really makes a big difference.
It does seem like there's a lot of input coming back specifically from this Olympia.
I know Jay went off, right? I haven't listened. I just heard Jay was very, very vocal about what was going on with the Olympia.
But it's coming from a place of like wanting to improve it.
Absolutely. Nobody's trying to trash anybody or anything. Yeah. We all love the Olympia. We love all these shows, but we want to make sure that they're run to a point and we get images that are like super high level.
They're the best they can be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I have one question that I wanted to ask you before we kind of move on to the next kind of category here was, I want to know what was, this is such like a normal sports question. What was going through your mind when that first call out happened and then you see that it's Derek and Hottie in the center? Like what were your feelings like? Because I know you're very much like, okay, we don't say anything until it's done and we keep working.
I'm just trying to figure out how to improve.
Yeah.
That's it. How do we improve them, my guys? How do we improve? How do we get Hottie better? How do we get Derek better? What can I do in the next couple of minutes, the next couple of hours, the next day? What needs to happen? I'm picking apart all of the issues.
You're not getting caught up in they're in the center and first call outs.
No, I don't think that way. Anybody who knows me, I don't think that way. I'm not, all I do is find flaws. And I'm finding flaws in color, I'm in posing, in oil. I'm just making sure that they're not wiping too much oil off of Derek, making sure that I'm going to tell Hottie later to wash that oil, that tan off because it looked bad. Making sure that these guys are all hitting their poses. Like I went to Derek and I said, Derek, you need to make sure you get first into the pose and then last out. I want to make sure that you're focused on hitting your poses, get into the pose sooner. Sometimes he was taking a little bit long to get into the pose. Yeah. So I'm just like, I need you to do this. I want you to be able to do this on your back double bicep. I need you to be able to do this. So all I'm thinking about those things, they just wherever they just geographically are located on stage, that's great because I know that they're battling, but all I'm thinking about is just how to continue to improve. Always.
Yeah, because I think that so many people might get caught up in that and then back off the gas. Never. And then just think that they have some sort of, you have to keep it all the way through the finish line.
No.
Yeah.
No, all I'm thinking about is also like, what am I going to feed this guy? What am I going to feed Phil? Derek? What am I going to feed Phil?
Another standout. Hottie. It's another standout. You're thinking of one of the other ones.
Yeah, Phil and I were talking for a little while last night. Shout out to Phil. He sent me a really nice bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label for my birthday yesterday. Yeah. He sent me one before. I can't remember after which Olympia it was, but it was this double size, and it has laser etched, and it said Procreator on there.
No way.
It was cool. That was the last one. This one, it was just a really standard bottle, but he sent it over with a bunch of different things, gluten-free stuff that his wife would know what to pick because she's really good at being able to pick all that stuff. So him and Cherie put together this amazing delivery. Awesome. And I was like, ding dong. And I opened the door and it was like, you need your ID. And I'm like, we need your ID.
You need my ID?
Yeah. So
hey, that's a compliment.
Johnny Walker Blue, along with some gluten-free things, some flowers. I mean, 2 bottles of champagne. That was awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, thanks. Shout out to Phil and Cherie. Thank you guys.
That's why you were struggling a little bit into the podcast studio.
No, I didn't. That's coming this weekend. I had a little sip. That's it. That's for this weekend. But all in all, it was the same thing I would do with Phil. And that's why I kind of had Phil in the brain, because all I'm doing is constantly looking at what needs improvement. What can we improve on? Short-term things that we can fix within the next few minutes, if there are any. It could be an oil thing. It could be a color thing. It could be like let's make sure if there's going to be a next round, it's going to be a while, maybe getting some food, texting the guys or telling them, we need to get you some food. Or it's going to be right after prejudging, let me go back, let me look at them individually. And again, that's why it took so long to go to bed. And then I decided not to because it was going to be like 45 minutes of sleep, and I decided not to sleep for Chris. But it's just being able to check off all the boxes, understanding what we can do to improve.
Yeah. And you just obviously mentioned Chris there. So kind of a little bit of moving into that. Were there some big differences? Like things that you had to tweak? Was it pretty much like a standard, like, yes, we're going into this like I would approach any other athlete? Were there some things that you had to tweak for Chris specifically?
No, it was very, very different, man.
How so?
A lot of different ways. I think, and this would be great for Chris, to be on the podcast at some point. So if anybody knows Chris, I'll ask him if he should,
I know a guy.
Goodbye. But Chris has obviously been very open about his health issues. So he has to be super conservative with everything that goes into his body. Everything. We're talking about foods. We're talking about just, he doesn't do junk food. He eats organic. He eats minimal gluten. I mean, everything that has to do with inflammation, he stomps out completely. And for me to build on that and try to understand it in the short amount of time that we had was very, very difficult. And contrary to public opinion, we didn't have months and months and months together. We had about, I would guess, I had to go look at the exact calendar, around 14 weeks together.
Which you can keep saying this, but people are still going to
they can say whatever they want. But this is why, they can say whatever they want.
To set the record straight, you had about that amount of time.
Yeah, about that amount of time.
To learn a new athlete.
Learn a new athlete who has a medical condition, who has a lot of different things that I have to work around. Like he has a different training style than me. Getting him introduced to the FSC7 training style with high volume and being able to do those kinds of things. Him being out here for a week with Hottie, being able to train both of those guys at the same time was really, really, I think, a huge, just positive. It was a huge positive being able to do that. So I can see them. We can kind of go over things with the workouts, seeing the intensity, the amount of weight, balancing out amount of weight versus volume. And so Chris comes from winning 3 Olympia titles. So he's already won 3 times. So he's no slouch. So for me, I'm trying to chase perfection, and it's impossible. Everybody tries to do it. Every coach does it. It's impossible to get to, but we're all trying to go towards that goal of trying to bring in your client full, dry, separated, bring up weak points, minimize, maximize all the strong points, minimize any weak points. It's all about trying to be able to check all the boxes. And I felt like with Chris, getting to know him personally was the hardest thing because I know Courtney much better than I know Chris. Chris, we've only spoken a couple of times since the Arnold. That was it. As much, like I said, contrary to public opinion out there, that was it. So getting to know somebody at that level is a huge part of my coaching dynamic. Because what I do is I have to understand what makes that person tick and what that person's go buttons are. Sometimes you can be more aggressive. Sometimes you have to be less aggressive. Sometimes you have to work around certain different things, especially when someone's already been winning. They had such a great success together with Chris and with Ian. So talking to Ian several times on the phone, we had some really long conversations of things that they did in the past, things that worked, some things that didn't work. Being able to just pick his brain, understand. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to make it stronger.
You can get a bit of a starting point before moving into all of that. Because I saw you do that it was very, very interesting to watch. I saw you do the exact same thing during peak week. You approached Hottie very differently compared to how you approached Derek, compared to how you approached Chris. Because we were doing these training sessions back to back to back with all 3 guys. And watching you would put on almost like a completely different face for each athlete because you got an idea of like what each athlete needs from you in those moments to drive them to be better. And it was very different for each of them. And so do you think that you could have done that with because Chris seems very receptive. Chris seems very much like, all right, tell me what to do and I'll knock it out. Do you think that you could have, that's a tough question, but with any other athlete, that's a short period of time to learn somebody and get into it. What made you decide to do that? I
think once I started speaking to him and we were trying to add things in layers, I was saying, here's some information on my training. Try this out. Let's turn around and do this. Because at first, Chris was like, dude, I got my training on lock. I was like, okay, let's, is there a small possibility that we could change some things? He's like, well, yeah, but I think I'm okay with that. But again, I think it's great. Just we got to hear it out of his.
Yeah, we got to get Chris on.
We got to get Chris on to talk about it. So I don't want to speak for Chris, but it was one of those things where I think that we had to make up for a lot of that lost time. Why do I always work with somebody 9 months out? because I want to know their personality. And lots of times I'll work with somebody in the off season and you'll never see me get them ready for a show because by the time I get to know them, know their personality, I just sometimes feel like it's not a good fit. And that's why I like to have a large off season with somebody, because that way I understand we got to trust each other. I got to trust that you're going to be able to use the information I'm going to give you, but you have to trust me that I'm going to give you the proper information. So otherwise, 80% of what Hany tells me is not going to be good enough. You know, when you work with somebody for a long time, they're always going to add in their own little tweaks. Phil did it. There's some little things that he may have done. But after years and years and years, that's like 7, 10, 15, 12, 13, 14, 15, there might be some different little nuances. But in the beginning, when somebody is really dialed in, one of the reasons why they always look their best in the very beginning stages of the relationship is because they are just so focused on every word, every sentence, every paragraph of what you're saying. They're not trying to take your recipe and trying to say, well, I don't need this much of this really expensive ingredient, or I need to go ahead and I'm going to add a little bit more of this pepper. They're just following everything. A quarter teaspoon, a tablespoon, a cup. And this and this is going on. So it's this hyper-focused feeling. And to get to that point of trust, it normally takes for me 6 months before a 3-month prep. And when I noticed that we don't have that, it was my relationship with Courtney is very been going on for years. I've known Courtney for a long time. But with Chris, like I said, we've barely said more than a couple of words together.
Well, he doesn't say a lot.
No, and he doesn't speak a lot. He's not a very conversing type of person.
Yeah.
Like Courtney and I are like go back and forth for hours just talking about anything. Yeah. Right. But Chris isn't like that. He communicates in a different format, and I think anybody in his inner circle will tell you the same thing. So learning that and understanding it. I'll give you a little piece, though. I don't know if I've told you this before, but there was times where he would just get quiet when I asked him a question, and I would have to sit there and say, "You still there?" Because he's processing, right? He's processing. But yeah, or I put him on FaceTime, and that was the other thing. I'm like, don't think about, just tell me if I ask you a question. And it was one of those things, but it all turned out well because I think that trust and that bond was there. Yeah. But I don't think he realized how much goes into this in my system, how much I have to pour into it, but they have to reciprocate as well because it can't be one-sided. You have to be able to trust one another with every aspect of the prep, from the training to the nutrition to everything. So when you turn around and you're focusing on all this, you're going to be much more open to, hey, what should we do next? You feel like, okay, that's cool. I'm seeing some changes. What's going on? Do we want to go ahead and continue that second session on cardio? Yes, definitely. We're not going to cut that out yet. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. And all of those things is just this dynamic of kind of like, I'm a mechanic. I use this analogy a lot. I'm a mechanic. They're the driver. Their body is the car. And so me working with them on, hey, is there oversteer, is there understeer? Do we need to work on the suspension, the braking, the power?
Communication back and forth.
It's a lot of that. It's a lot of that. It's constant.
It's not just like you're just do this.
No.
You need that very nice flow of communication there.
Right.
That's cool. Yeah, it was fun to watch.
Yeah.
It was really
and
cool
again, he's won 3 times.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to say, hey, Hany screwed him up, if we don't get this right. Yeah. So I really, really did whatever I possibly could. I mean, I do with every single prep anyways. That's why I only work with a handful of people. But specifically, it was cool to be able to see him at probably his all-time best. And I think that a lot of people said that it was his all-time best. And I felt like a super proud moment. Yeah. I think that Chris, when he was backstage and he's like, posing, and me, I'm not very, I guess my emotions, I'm pretty even keel. I'm not super like crazy excited, but I'm very intense. And so I'm like, okay, we need to do this. I need you to do this. This is how I want you to pose this shot. I want you to work on this. And I think he was just kind of waiting. And I'm like, okay, you're ready. And we had a little talk backstage.
Him and I talked about that. I think you walked up right as we were talking about it. We were talking about it in the gym. I was like, have you learned the Hany look yet? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, meaning when Hany thinks you're doing a good job. And he's like, what does that look? And you just go. You just nod your head. And he goes, I know that look. And I'm like, I know, that's the one. He won't be like, oh, you're doing a good job. You'll just get the little nod of approval, and that's how you know that things are going the right direction.
Yeah, you're going in the right direction. We're going in the right direction.
Would you say that there was a significant, because this is a first-time classic for somebody?
No. So there's one other classic, and that was Dave Rienzi. Danny's husband, who's the business partner, ex-wife of The Rock. So Dave was trying to go pro, was trying to decide which class to do, when we eventually put him in classic. So the only other person with Chris Bumstead that I've worked with in classic is Dave Rienzi, who got his pro card. And it was the first time we ever worked together, and he got his pro card.
Oh, wow.
At the, I'm trying to remember what show it was, because it was in Orlando during the pandemic, but it was a master's class. So I want to say it was either Masters Nationals, or it was one of the shows that had a master's class where he won his pro card. And so Dave, he hasn't competed as a pro yet. He's actually, I think, coming in this weekend, him and the whole crew from $7 for XFL, because they moved it here. So we're going to get together, maybe do a workout, or get together, have dinner or lunch. But yes, so those are the two.
Well, would you say that there's a significant, what would be, if you had to quickly boil it down, the differences open to classic, approaching a peak week, changing certain things? Are there significant differences, or is it just conditioning, fullness?
It's just all of the precursor to the peak week is all the differences, because you got to make weight. So naturally, making weight creates a limitation into your overall size. So as we were trying to get ready for the show, and I knew that he was a 240-pound weight cap, doing that was going to be a problem, because 245 to 247 pounds, he looks pretty nasty.
Yeah.
He looks really nasty. You saw him a week ago.
Oh, yeah.
When he was about 5-7 pounds heavier than his weight limit. Yeah. He looks really
Which is just unbelievable to think about. It's like 247, like pretty conditioned 247. Like
in the gym,
that's a big guy. That's a really big guy.
It's 247, and we're in the gym, and I'm like, okay, now we have to try to make weight. We have now also the other roadblock was they moved it. They moved it from the morning weigh-ins to the evening. So instead of Thursday morning, where you can wake up and you roll out of bed, you don't eat any don't drink any water, you don't eat, and you go weigh in, and then you start to load up. You start carb loading. That couldn't happen this year, because now it's at 8 o'clock at night, 8 p.m. on Wednesday. So you have all day, which you normally would be eating, but your weight would be going up compared to waking up fasted.
Yeah.
So now I had to manipulate the whole dynamic to make sure he makes weight, but don't do anything too critically off-putting in terms of throwing his body off, so that he could still carb up and he could still make sure he looks good in a couple of days. Because you do too many things to pull water, or you get too flat, or you end up doing things that your body's just completely off, then you can't right the ship if that happens with the electrolytes. So a lot of talk about
the craziest balancing act. Doing that with two other guys over here, not weight cap, but still balancing.
Well, and he keeps asking me, he's like, okay, do you think we're gonna make weight? I'm like, yeah, we'll make weight, but we're gonna have to do A, B, and C. And he's like, are you sure?
I remember overhearing those conversations, and you're like, well, we're 7 pounds over. I'm like, 7 pounds?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But we're good. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna do this. And it's like almost like, okay, now you eat. Now drink this.
Yeah.
Now eat. Now drink this. Check your weight. Okay, good. I mean, because again, all day I still fed him. I still hydrated him, but I had to minimize certain things to make sure that he still makes weight. He made it under by a couple pounds.
Wow.
So it was solid, and we had a little bit of room to work with, because I didn't want to stress just in case something was just a little off of the scale. So I wanted to be about a pound and a half, and then I think all in all, it ended up being about 2.5 pounds.
So with somebody like that is at the top of that, moving into an off season for next year, how do you approach that? What's the focus? Because like, how much is it just you're going to put on more mass in certain areas, but you're going to bring in that tighter conditioning that's going to give you that space? Or how do you even juggle that when you're at the top?
Yeah, in the beginning stages, what's going to happen is just getting workouts in, just getting blood flow going, trying to make sure that you're trying to get out all the crinks and crackles out of your joints from not training, and just, I mean, everybody got sick after Vegas too.
Oh yeah.
He got sick. Derek got sick. Hottie got a little bit sick. Everyone got either COVID or they ended up getting a flu, like some kind of variant of flu. So many people, knock on wood, I didn't. But the reason why I didn't was because I loaded up on just immune boosters, and then I also ran an IV bag when I got there. Just to stay hydrated because I felt so dehydrated when I was there. So I had one of the companies come out that would do that, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to feel a lot better if I can just keep my immune system up and keep hydrated. But what happened was a lot of people got sick afterwards, and they're all starting to get back. You know, Derek's back in the gym. I think Chris started getting back in the gym just a day or two ago, and he normally takes a long time off. And I'm like, oh no, you're going to, you know, taking a couple of weeks off is fine. But I think in the past, he takes like 3 months off, I believe. And there's been some people who've done it. Ronnie did it and whatnot, but I'm not a huge fan of that. Just even going in and just throwing some blood in, that's all. Just going in, doing some pump sets. You don't necessarily have to go and do a big rebound. Now, for some people, it's a good idea to go do a rebound and be able to go do some kind of rebound blast where I'm going to take up the calories. I'm going to really try to go for 3 or 4 weeks to try to hyper load carbohydrates from a couple hundred grams that they were doing during the pre-contest to 600-800 grams that they're doing in the off season. But I feel that with Chris, he's now, I think, just trying to get to that point where he wants, you know, getting him back into the gym, just doing a little bit of things. But yeah, he got sick. Hottie got a little bit sick. Nothing major, but you know, he had more like sniffles, like a head cold afterwards. And then Derek ended up getting flu-like symptoms as well. But I heard James got sick. I heard Milos got sick. I spoke to some of the judges. They all got sick. I'm just like, oh, dude.
Close proximity was just spreading around.
It was that, and then people flying in with different variants from all over the world to Vegas, and I think that's also it too.
And so you said Derek's, I already saw Derek's back in, Chris is back in. Is Hottie, I can't imagine him taking very much time off training after seeing how he trains. Yeah,
I think that right now he's probably just doing a little bit in the gym. Him and I have been talking about, it was like, I can't remember what day it was when he landed back in Iran, but he ended up going straight to Shiraz instead of Tehran because they were worried about it being so big with the number of people. We got to get Tim to get the BBC coverage, but the BBC Persia coverage was crazy because you see the sea of people. And that was out of the small airport in Shiraz. This wasn't the capital because they were worried that when he went there, they're not going to be able to handle the crowds. So when he flew back, he went from Dubai to Shiraz and his hometown. And it was crazy, but they said that it would have been much crazier if he would have went into the capital. And so
that's amazing.
Yeah. But
well deserved.
Super well deserved. And it's great to see. We've seen in the past when he placed third.
Yeah.
And it was a group of people, several hundred people showed up. I mean, this was in the thousands. But when those kinds of countries and those kinds of regions really celebrate their athletes, that's what it's all for. Because there's nobody that follows bodybuilding right now that doesn't have hope. That's a kid, that's an amateur, or somebody that's just starting out that says, I can eventually be Mr. Olympia. Because if Hadi Chopin from Shiraz, Iran, can come to America and win the biggest trophy on the planet, anybody can do it.
It was so well deserved. I know I said that again, but like one special moment I'll say is right at the gala, a few of us were about to head out. And he saw across the way, we just waved at him, and he stopped everything. There was people running up to him for photos. He stopped everything, came over to each of us and gave us a hug and said, thank you. And I was like, that just goes to show that he is so appreciative of everybody around. And we were just around filming him and grabbing stuff for the weeks leading up to it. But the fact that stuck with me a lot, the fact that he paused everything, I was like, wait, I want to go say goodbye to these people. That was really cool. And so he's just such a genuine person. It's really amazing to watch him. And it's great that, he was able to make that massive accomplishment.
Yeah. I think that it's really cool to see so many people that agreed with the outcome. Because so many times do you see in previous Olympias or just competitions in general that there's controversy. And I felt like not just in the open class, but in so many classes that I saw, there was the least amount of controversy that I've seen in a very, very long time.
It's a great point. I actually didn't really think about that until now. Everybody's kind of in agreement that was,
very few. I mean, any divisions, if there's any divisions, you guys are watching this and on YouTube, let me know. I would love to see, and I want to go back and kind of break down the Olympia a little further. But if there's any of the divisions that you guys might have thought that there might have been some things that could have went another way, please put down in the comments below. But I think that when you look at everything, you now, for me personally, it's starting to set in a little bit because I'm always on to the next one. Literally the next day. Next day we went to, I think it was, what do they call that? It's the seminar that they do.
Oh yeah, Superstar Seminar.
Superstar Seminar is on Sunday. I felt like at that point, Hottie was there. I was there to translate for him. You had Derek, you had Sebum, you had all the winners from all the different divisions that were there.
The amazing Sid Gillen. We'll say
Sid,
that.
Oh, by the way, Sid crushed. She crushed. I mean, I don't even know. I can't keep up. Was it number?
Everybody thought that was number 6 for her. Yeah. Everybody was like, oh, wait, Hany won 23.
No.
And I had to make sure everybody's like, she's one of our amazing Evogen Elite.
She works with Damien.
Yep.
He's one of our coaches. She's been using Evogen products going on like 4 or 5 years. It's a great story about how she started using the products. And then we found out at the Arnold last year that she was a customer. And that's how we signed her. It was just a proud moment. And she's like, I'm not with anyone. I don't believe in just signing with anybody. I've been using your products for going on 4 years or however long since she's practically been winning. And I was like, let's have a conversation. And we brought her on. And I feel like a lot of these divisions are underrepresented. And I feel like we have to definitely do something about it. And I'd love to have her back on the show after her win here. But they did a great job. But no, I did not train her. She's an Evogen athlete. We've done some sessions together just for the purpose of being able to shoot some content and being able to do some really cool stuff. But her and Damien are just killing it. They did a great job. So again, shout out to both of them, crushing it once again. And I feel that with the situation right now with the Olympia, what we really need to do is we need to focus on also how we can make the show better. I feel like moving the show to the September timeframe, going back then, when I was working with Jay and Phil and all those guys, doing it earlier in the year was so much better for multiple reasons. Number one, you have the Arnold now in March. It gives breathing room. A lot of these guys aren't doing the Arnold. Why? Because they're not doing the Arnold because it's back to back. So they don't have any breathing room. But when it was back in September, you'd see Jay do the Arnold and the Olympia, and they would come over and be able to do both because when it was in September, it was good. Plus, a little bit of selfishness here, though. All of the guys that wanted to go out and have a good time on Sunday, they'd go to pool parties. Earlier in the year because it was still warm and the pools were still going off, and all those guys in Vegas, because all the guys were like, God, I loved it back then, Hany.
It was ice cold now.
And now it's freezing. It's like 30 degrees outside and snowing in the mountains right there outside of Vegas. And what it also does as a person who owns a supplement company, what it does is it also helps us with being able to focus on a trade show, wanting to do a trade show and wanting to be in the moment. I didn't even do a booth this year at the Olympia. Why? Because I knew I couldn't be there and personally, but it's because we're so close to Black Friday and all of those things that your budget's spent. So I didn't even do a booth because of that. But if it was in September, I think a lot of other companies would also want to do a booth because it's going to have its own merit to be able to put marketing dollars into earlier. But if it's near Black Friday, you're competing against companies like Best Buy and everybody else for advertising and for everything else that goes along with those marketing dollars. And so that's why we didn't do a booth. Everyone's like, why didn't you do a booth? Why didn't you do a booth? I said, because like between the Black Friday sale and all of these other things, we just didn't have the budget. We didn't have the time. We didn't have any of those other things to go along with that. So now if you can move it to maybe the latest, like first week of October, like it was 2 years ago, or just go back to September, it would be great because now you have the ability to kind of give it some breathing room. So it helps with companies to be able to come in. It helps with now 2 major shows to be able to really kind of grow off of one another instead of kind of it just being convoluted, being so close. So I think it helps that as well. And I also think that all in all, your focus can be, I want to get this done, give us some breathing room. Now we can go into the Black Friday and the big retail sets that everyone has to do because there's a lot of consumer acquisition at that time where there are people like new people want to try out products because there's great deals going on. So that's when they go and lean into that. So if anybody's listening from the Olympia, I really feel if there's a way you can move that show into September or at the very latest, the beginning of October, it's great. It's great. And then the nationals, can be back in November like it normally is. And you kind of get back into that old cycle of where the shows were. Yeah. But that's just my 2 cents. And then the other thing that came up during that I guess,
Superstar seminar. There you go.
That I was talking to some of the guys about that were asking me, I said, I think you got to get rid of that whole press conference thing.
Yeah.
I think now it can slightly be adjusted, but the Meet the Olympians should be put on Sunday. That's when people they got a burger, they got some water, they've got some fruit, they've got
Great point.
They got some calories in them. They're going to want to interact. But if you're expecting someone to go in right after their Pro-Tan or right before their Pro-Tan to go shake hands and be nice and sit there and talk to people, and these people are coming in spending tons of money coming into Las Vegas or flying into wherever it's going to be next year, it's going to be Orlando. They're going to want to sit there and shake hands and take photos. They might want to buy your merchandise. You want to do it in a really stress-free environment. So yeah, not everyone's going to be happy with their placings, but they're happy to see the fans that are there to see them. So put it on a day where you can turn around and say 10, 11 a.m. till 2 or 4, you're going to be able to go meet your favorite athletes. Yeah. And they're going to, those lines, you can see every single one of them. All those people that are the fans to meet just their favorite competitor, they'll be able to sit down and these athletes will be able to give more time to.
Yeah. And just more energy in general.
Yeah, because these other people are like, I don't want to be on my feet. Yeah. I'm going to get watery. Yeah. I need to hit a meal. I got to go get my Pro-Tan on, or I'm dripping in Pro-Tan because the room is so hot because there's so many people here. I don't want to be here right now. I should have my feet up. I should be in a low stress environment. You put these people in this high stress environment the day before their show. And so I think we got to break the cycle and say, this should be done on Sunday possibly. So that way everybody can take a deep breath. They can get some food in them and they'll be in a better space.
It could be almost like a celebration afterwards.
Absolutely.
Whatever direction, just like, and the way you brought something up very, very good there, that you're talking about the people who still want to see them. And how they like, if you're going to a meet and greet, you have the people that you kind of want to see in mind, whether it's before or after. People are going to want to go see Urs. People are going to want to go see Ramon. Anybody they know if they're going to the Olympia, they want to go see these people. That's not going to change whether it's before or after. In my opinion, I think the lines would be the same, but it's just the athletes will now be able to give even more attention.
Yeah. And who knows? You can even incorporate booths there. You can maybe say, hey, look, we're going to do an extra day of expo possibly. That can be worked out amongst them logistically. I'm just saying is that I think people would stay an extra day to be able to really interact. And then maybe even that night, then you can do an after party, an official after party on Sunday night so that they can turn around and do something along this. Because I know that there are some pools that like XS and all those will have pools. Yeah. So if they want to have that. So that's another way of doing it as well.
But you're saying do without the press conference altogether.
I think that the press conference either has to be rebooted. You know, some people want it to go back to the old press conference. Yeah. The only downside of that is then you're still going to have to cherry pick because you're not going to be able to get 400 competitors on that stage.
Yep. And it was a little tough this year, which they acknowledged. They talked about it. It was a little disjointed.
And I know they're trying. And I like the fact that they're trying new things. But I think that the meet and the greet is the biggest thing because it takes away from the interaction with the fans when the person that's getting ready for a show the day before doesn't want to be there. They do not want to be there the night before. So again, my recommendation, move it to Sunday, take that seminar, the Superstar seminar, mix that all together with that Sunday event and put a series of events that day so that there's going to be a really good fan and athlete connection.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. And we want all the athletes to look their best. It should be the priority.
Yeah. Because you want their low stress, keep them going, let them peak when they're supposed to, get them on stage earlier so that you can sell more pay-per-views also. Yeah. Because if you get them on stage at 8 o'clock, now it's only 11 o'clock on the East Coast. right? Or 7 o'clock, and it's 10 o'clock on the East Coast. Get them on stage then, and you'll sell more pay-per-views. But if you're putting them at 2 o'clock in the morning, some people are just like, I'm tapping out. I'm not going to stick around. I'm not going to buy this pay-per-view. This thing's taking forever. Or if they did, then that left a bad taste in their mouth. So these are all just ways where I feel like they can just make these refinements and make it even better. Yeah. So again, we talked about a lot today.
We covered a lot. Yeah. Well, we had a lot to go over.
Yeah.
We're going to need a few more.
We're going to have to go
back
to back.
Yeah. We got to get Derek in here.
Well, you got to be around.
Yeah. I was out of time for a short period of time there. Yeah.
So, and then again, a lot of people are asking me to come in and do the podcast. Now that we're back, let me know who you'd like to see, whether we want to get them on Skype / Zoom or in the studio here. I'd love to have, just now that we have some breathing room, the stress of the Olympia is over. Obviously, I'd like to get my athletes in so that we can speak to them. If they can't get in person, we'll put them on Zoom, but I prefer to have them here in person. And I was bummed because I was trying to get out to see Jay, and Jay was just texting me, I'm so glad I'm not eating your fish and Hany special and all that crap, dude. He was like, he did a podcast with Phil and they talked about it. He's like, I just text Hany. I told him, I'm so glad I was over it. You guys all miss it. Phil misses it. Jay misses it. Jay, by the way, Jay said something about $1 million. If somebody gave him $1 million, he'd come back. So I don't know. I think we should start a GoFundMe page.
I think that GoFundMe would fill up real quick.
Should we do a GoFundMe?
I think it would fill up real quick.
A GoFundMe for Jay Cutler.
Jeez.
Like he needs it. But anyways, it's funny because he was talking about it during the podcast with Phil and talking about some times where we got to.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, you never know. Masters.
Yeah.
Masters. And the Masters is coming up in Romania this coming year. So that's going to be very interesting. I believe that's around August. Okay. So that's going to be interesting. I think the men have to be over 45 in the men's open division, as well as some of the other bodybuilding style divisions. They're going to have to be over 45. So Phil doesn't qualify because he's 43. So he would have to wait a couple of years if he decided to do that. But it was funny that they were even chatting it up about it. And, Phil and I were talking about it yesterday.
All right, $1 million. Let's do it, people. Come on.
$1 million.
Yeah.
We got to see how much.
Is $1 million to him?
He just said if someone paid me $1 million, I would compete again. If they give me $1 million, I'd compete again.
That's a solid payout right there for an Olympia.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think he just wants that just to do it.
Yeah.
Just to do it.
Yeah.
Not to win it, but just to do it. But it's always an interesting, comparison. Now, again, guys, we have so much. We're starting off this great new year. I just updated the FSD7 app with a new module for those of you who have not been on the FSD7 app before or are not current members. Now is a great time to sign up. You can go ahead and use code Hany for 25% off. And I just want to say thank you because you guys are giving me such great feedback on it. And I'm going to continue to keep building out the different modules within my FSD7 app. So if you're looking for my style of workouts and you want something that's going to create more intensity, check out the FSD7 app. It's on the FSD7 website, or if you go to HanyRambod.com, that's where the coupon works. If you don't care about coupons and you just want to download it from the Apple or Android database, you can do that as well. But the coupon is good for the HanyRambod.com site. So again, use code Hany. You'll end up getting the 25% off. And I just want to say thank you. You guys have been so great. I mean, it was my birthday yesterday. So many well wishes. So many different congratulatory text messages, emails, messages on Facebook, Twitter, just every social media piece, Instagram. And, TikTok. TikTok has been, you don't even talk about TikTok, man. TikTok
hit 500,000 today.
It was 500,000.
Hit 500,000 today.
Thank you. We got to do a giveaway. So stay tuned on my IG. I'm going to do a giveaway on IG as well as TikTok for the 500,000 mark on my TikTok. And there's a lot of people that want to come in that are not quite Olympia level, but they're just within the industry and they want to come and train with me. So if you're one of them, go ahead and shoot me a DM or send me a message. Noel from Rise, super, super popular bodybuilder, super nice guy. We ended up doing shoulders. So if you haven't seen that, go to my page on YouTube. And it was a great shoulder workout right before he left for Dubai. So Noel, have fun out there.
Definitely not fitting in a seat now.
Oh man! But you know what's funny is that I told him let's do legs. He's like, I'm flying. So it saved him because he had to fly the next day. It would have been a rough,
really bad flight.
But when he gets back, he's got to do legs. But if you're out there personally, you guys want to get together, let me know. I'm definitely open to doing some different types of things. I'm really enjoying being out here doing collabs and doing stuff here in Dallas at Absolute Recomp and with Nabil, even though Nabil drives me crazy. I'm going to bring him on here too. Drives me nuts, man. He's like my son. I swear to God. He's like, him and Cameron are like brothers now. And, but he's a great guy. And the staff over there is awesome. But yeah, so again, we're going to be doing some different events. Follow me on social media. And we're also with all the Evogen athletes. Follow evogennutrition.com. I'm sorry, Evogen Nutrition at Instagram as well as YouTube. And again, all I have to say is I'm humbled, I'm blessed, and thank you for all of your support. Hany, Rambod, Austin, and that's the truth.